Story of Cai Vang's third wife. In the past, in Hoang Van Canton, there was a foreman. People often called him Cai Vang. When he was young, he caught a bulletproof gem and wore it on his body, which had the power to make arrows and bullets that were about to touch his skin go the other way. He was very happy, and from then on, he wore it and never let it go. During his time as warden, Cai Vang once lost tax money and was imprisoned by a provincial official and tortured very miserably. When the guards marched through a forest, Cai Vang took advantage of everyone's vulnerability and broke the shackles and ran away. The escorting soldiers chased and shot, but thanks to the miracle of the pearl, he escaped unharmed. From then on, Cai Vang gathered the party's followers, prepared weapons to fight against the court, and declared himself the supreme duke. Cai Vang has 3 wives, notably the third wife, who is only 20 years old but has excellent martial arts skills. Before the day of plotting big things, he called all 3 wives to a meeting with him to find out their feelings. He asked, "I am no different from riding on a tiger's back. Sooner or later they won't leave me alone. So I want to stir up the sky and stir up the water, destroy all the greedy people to create a separate world." What does her father think? The first wife replied, "How can a grasshopper prop up a cart? Don't think foolishly. The fate of ethnic destruction is still lurking behind us. I hope you think again. If you raise an army, I will have to return to take care of my mother. One day, if something happens, I would like to take care of my old mother for you." The second wife also continued, "Dear sir, listen to me, don't go. There's no shortage of entertainment at the door of your business." But hearing the 2 women insist on talking about it, the third wife couldn't help but angrily shouted loudly, "Don't you 2 know what time it is? Birds cannot fly, trees cannot grow because of them. Currently, all 4 directions are still waiting for the Supreme Duke." The weak words of the 2 sisters should be taken back to the kitchen. My concubine was the first to lose, the second to win, and decided to follow him to the end, destroy Kiet True's ward, and build his fortune. Anyone who loves their mother and misses their father should let them come home. Having said that, he rode his horse and shouted out to the training ground with the soldiers. Seeing that his third wife's intention was determined, Cai Vang did not hesitate anymore and decided to sacrifice the flag of rebellion. Soon, everywhere responded, people and horses filled the land. His subordinates are as strong as wolves and have very high martial arts skills. There were people like Li Han who called himself a marshal, Li Chuat who called himself a duke, Tuan Ken who was a frontman, etc. Cai Vang's third wife rose up among those generals. During the battle to capture Langjiang Citadel, she held 2 swords in both hands and sat on a horse, rushing out into the middle of the battle line. The army officers could only crawl out and run. Receiving Lang Palace, she handed over the city to her husband, then took the lead district to attack Vanjiang district. Hearing the news of Cai Vang's rebellion, the provincial officials gathered all their soldiers to surround Lang Palace, hoping to recapture it. At that time, Cai Vang's third wife was besieging Vanjiang district town. When she heard the military report, she immediately said, "Who dares to be so bold? If I only lift my skirt to kill in one battle, I'm afraid you guys can't escape even if you run and fly." Immediately, she pulled her troops back to fight fiercely with the army. The enemy provincial officials could not stand it and were beaten severely. Seeing that it was difficult to deal with the enemy, they immediately made a report to the king. The king ordered several generals to bring back soldiers from other provinces to force them to destroy Cai Vang. Both sides held out for several months. Every time they fought, Cai Vang rushed forward. Arrows from the imperial army rained down on him, but they did nothing. Seeing this, they were frightened, thinking that he had God's help. Everyone became discouraged, and the rebel army increased more and more. Later, a trusted subordinate of Cai Vang committed a crime. He was afraid that his master would kill him, so he sneaked in at night to surrender to the imperial army. He told me, "My teacher has jewels worn on his body. The cast iron bullets that hit him are like hitting an iron wall. The only way is to use gold to cast bullets and shoot them, maybe they will hit." When they heard about it, they immediately cast some gold bullets and gave them to good shooters, telling them to only open fire when they saw Cai Vang. The next day they brought troops to challenge. Marshal Li Han led his troops to resist, but they only shouted Cai Vang's name from morning to noon without stopping. Seeing that, Cai Vang got angry and rode his horse out. Indeed, the golden bullets made the bullet-mounted pearl lose all its magic. The bullet penetrated his head and severed his right ear. He could only hold his head and ride his horse back to the palace. The third wife and her subordinates gathered to treat her, but the wound was too severe to be saved. Before he breathed his last, Cai Vang only had a few words to say to his wife. "Oh dear! God has ruined me halfway. I entrust all my soldiers to you. You try your best. Avenge me." Seeing her husband dead, Cai Vang's third wife was extremely angry. On the one hand, she forced everyone to keep the news of her husband's death a secret and ordered the army to secretly take her husband's body out of the siege and bury it in her hometown. As for me, I personally control my subordinates to resist the tide. She chose 300 people to follow her into battle. That day the commander, who commanded the army to fire golden bullets, went out to fight. She resisted for a few rounds, then pretended to lose and ran away. Our commander was rushing towards victory. He was so happy that he quickly spurred his horse to chase after him very quickly. Unexpectedly, he lost his wits to a woman. He was used by her to use a sword and suddenly turned back to capture him alive. She immediately took him under her armpit and brought him back to the city, then ordered him to take the crib back to her hometown and burn it as a candle to worship her husband. From then on, the generals became even more excited. In another battle, Cai Vang's third wife captured a red lottery alive. Seeing that the enemy general was a handsome young man, she could not bear to kill him, so she ordered him to be detained and given good food and water. Her soldiers won a few more battles, but at that time the royal army knew that Cai Vang had died, so they tried their best to attack. In the end, her army had to abandon the citadel and scatter to different directions. Knowing that the opportunity would be difficult to maintain for a long time, one day Cai Vang's wife gathered the generals and told them, "Now the Supreme Duke has passed away, we have not yet had the time. So let everyone go home and do business, waiting for another good opportunity." The generals had to wipe away their tears and say goodbye. She ordered someone to rescue the red lottery and return it to the court on the condition that her troops would be allowed to disperse on their own and not be wanted. Then she ordered all her wealth to be distributed to everyone and then left, not knowing where she was going. 1. Scary Southerners tell the story of Don Uan becoming king of Siam. Although the content is not the same as the above story, it also has the image of a bullet-resistant pearl. Don Uan is from Mui village, Thuong Phuc district, Ha Dong. That day, the Siamese army marched into the country, and the king sent him as a general to lead the army to resist. In him, he originally had a bulletproof pearl. Then he sat on the city gate, his head covered with a parasol, and loudly told the enemy, "Let them shoot for half a day. If I die, my army will open the city gate and let me in. If not, then they must take me back as king. Their water is flying. I promise that I will not fail. Are you satisfied?" The Siamese army accepted. They then poured bullets into him like rain, the canopy collapsed and the soldiers all died. Only he remained still. The enemy shot for half a day without a single shot hitting him. They were frightened and tried to retreat, but suddenly he stood up and shouted for the army to advance as one. The enemy then ran out of ammunition and fled and surrendered. Finally, they honored him as King of Siam until he died for 42 years. His body was brought back to our king. Later, once the King of Siam, a descendant of Don Uan, came to visit us and brought his entourage to Mui village to visit his ancestors' graves. 2. Northerners, when talking about District Vang, i.e. Nguyen Co., who fought against the French in Sun Tay, also said that he had a battle pearl worn on his body so that bullets could not hit him. The French enemy did not know how to suppress them, so they sent a Vietnamese trader who was good at shooting and pretended to follow district region. Cai Vang did not expect to be a trickster, but seeing that he was talented at shooting, he accepted him as his subordinate, and in the end he killed him with a knife. 3. King Pig. Once upon a time, there was a child with no father or mother, who was picked up and raised by people to work as an errand boy. Because he is as dirty as a pig, people call him Pig. 4. No matter how much anyone wants to mock and despise him, Hio still looks down on everyone. Through years of famine, Hio still lived and grew bigger. At the age of 15, Hio went to live with a big mandarin. One day, the mandarin forced Hio to draw a basin of water to wash his feet. When Hio touched the mandarin's foot, the mandarin pointed at the moles and said, "I have 3 red moles on my foot. Be careful. If you scratch it, it will be difficult for your whole family to repay me for that precious appearance, my child." I heard this and thought to myself, what is this guy who only has 3 small moles doing, making such a fuss? Thinking, Hio opened his shirt to show the mandarin his moles and said, "The big mandarin only has 3 moles, which is so precious, and I have 9. The mandarin saw that the boy had 9 red moles on his back and was very surprised. He thought to himself, "Oh my God! How can he have such a noble appearance? If he doesn't become a king in the future, he will also be a lord. That's it. If we let him become king and lord, what kind of system will there be? We have to find a way to kill him." Then a few days later, the mandarin gave the maid a packet of poison and told her, "Remember to put this medicine in the rice for the pig to eat. But keep your mouth shut. If anyone knows, I will kill you. You first." The maid took the poison package and felt infinite pity for Pig. But she could not disobey her master's orders and had to sprinkle it into the rice bowl to save a portion for Hio. That day, Hio had to go to the market to buy paper and pens for his owner. When I returned, the maid was feeding the pigs. Seeing that Pig was about to put a bowl of rice in his mouth, she quickly took the firewood and knocked on the pig's feeding trough while pretending to scold him. Poor pig. Hot pig. Pigs that eat pigs die, and pigs that don't eat pigs also die. She knocked and said that 3 times. Pig heard it and felt guilty, but still didn't understand what it meant, so he ran over and asked softly, "How's it going? Tell me if there's anything." The girl replied, "Don't forget me, Pig, I will let you know." Pig nodded. She quickly took Hio to a secluded place, told him the whole story, and said, "If he doesn't escape quickly, disaster will come again. It's unavoidable." Hio thanked the girl very much, hugged her head, kissed her and said, "In the future, if I succeed, you can come find me, but only with loose hair like this will I recognize you." Pig left to live with a rich old man. The bald rich man saw Hio coming to apply for a job and didn't know what to use it for. When he had a few children playing around, he asked Hio to take care of them for him. The work was easy and Hio fulfilled his duties. But the children must have been extremely naughty. They made it very difficult for Hio to monitor him, and he was often unfairly scolded. Pig gritted his teeth and said nothing. One day, the rich man saw that his children looked sad and told Hio, "You should crawl down and be a horse to make them laugh. Only then will they be happy and I'll hire you to get your money's worth." The poor pig had to wait until all the older children and the younger children climbed on its back. They like it very much. So, the next day it happened again. The rich man's eldest son rode on Pig's back. He had leopard ears, and Hio said nothing. After a while, he grabbed the whip and hit Pig's ass, shouting, "En hong en gung," like his father was riding a horse. Pig couldn't bear it any more. He turned his hand behind his back and brushed the baby away. The child was thrown violently forward, his head hit the wall, his brain shattered and he died. Seeing the baby dead, Hio was scared and quickly ran away. Hio went very far, found a temple in the mountains, asked the monk to let him stay and serve, then cut his hair and take refuge. The monk needed a child to climb up on the pedestal every day to clean the statues, so he accepted one for Hio at the temple. The work is nothing to complain about. One day, the monk saw that the places between the limbs of the statues were still full of dust and scolded Hio for lying. The next day, Hio tried to thoroughly wipe the statue's fingers and toes, but it was difficult to wipe them clean. Angry, Hio rolled his eyes at a statue and shouted, "Raise your hand so I can clean it." Suddenly the wooden statue raised its hands to the sky. After wiping, Hio said again, "Stretch your legs quickly, otherwise I will give you a stick." The Buddha statue sitting cross-legged quickly stood up and stretched its legs for Hio to clean. By doing it that way, Hio was able to clean all the statues. Finished cleaning somewhere. The pig shouted again for the statues to return to their original positions. From then on, Hio kept doing it that way. But one day, after cleaning, Hio forgot to tell the statues to put down their arms and legs, leaving it like that and returning to their room. In the evening, the monks went to the temple to chant sutras and saw all the Buddha statues standing with their legs stretched out. They were extremely surprised, so they called all the monks in the temple to come and witness an unprecedented scene. When asked about Hio, he confessed that today he absent-mindedly forgot to tell the statues to sit down like before. The monk thought to himself, "Only the Son of Heaven can command Buddha. This child who can command Buddha will surely become king one day. If I don't report to the higher officials, one day they will hunt me down, and I will definitely be at fault." Thinking about it, the monk immediately sent someone to secretly report to the mandarin. But another monk told Hio, so Hio ran away before the officials arrived. This time Hio came to live with a rich businessman. In front of the rich merchant's house, there is a row of areca nut trees growing evenly. He assigned Hio to draw water to water the areca trees every day. One day, Hio was so tired and sat down to rest under the shade of a tree. He pointed to 3 areca trees and blurted out a joke. "This tree is the father. This tree is the mother. This tree is the child." Naturally, those 3 areca trees became different in size and height. The father tree suddenly grew taller than all of them. On the contrary, the young areca tree became dwarfed, its chamber rubbing close to the ground. The next day, the rich merchant walked into the garden and saw some areca trees changing shape and thought it was strange, so he called Hio to ask him the reason. Pig replied, "It was because I told him that he changed like that." The rich man was very surprised, but he also told Hio, "If that's the case, make it back to the way it was, otherwise I'll give you a good beating." Pig rolled his eyes and told him, "People eat one piece, say one word, but that's not the case. I definitely won't go against my word." The rich businessman got angry and tried to beat Hio with a stick. He ran away for his life. Even though he was hungry, he didn't dare stop. Until midnight, both tired and sleepy, Hio crawled into a house to find a place to lie down. Meanwhile, all the beds and cots were crowded with people sleeping soundly like the dead. Pig saw that in the next room there was an altar to worship the dragon god with enough space to lie down and a very good mat to cover it, so he threw the dragon god statue into a corner and climbed up on the table to have a good night's sleep. The next morning, Hio woke up and continued walking. When the homeowner woke up and saw the dragon god's body lying on the ground and there were traces of the person lying on the altar that had not been cleaned up, he was surprised and quickly spread out the mat and brought the statue up. But when they put their hands on the dragon god statue, strangely enough, no matter how many people gathered, they couldn't lift it. While looking at each other in bewilderment, suddenly a medium came up and, on behalf of the dragon god, told everyone, "I am originally in the king's land. Wherever the king places me, I will stay there." Seeing that, everyone believed that the angel had come to their house last night. That news spread more and more widely, while the people were eagerly waiting for a lord to be born and save the world from misery and misery. That day, Hio ran up the mountain to join a group of enemies. He followed them to fight, gradually achieving many achievements. Then, thanks to his health and resourcefulness, he was finally elected as the camp's owner by the whole camp. From then on, more and more people followed, especially when they learned that Hio was the one who could command gods and Buddhas. Hio led the army against the imperial army, fighting them many crazy battles. Hio's land expands forever. He proclaimed himself king, appointed a court and officials. His enemies often called him King Pig. Until King Heo had a chance to pass through his old province the day before, suddenly a robot in the midfield team led a girl with shoulder-length hair to the front of the royal camp. At first, he couldn't remember who it was. But when he looked at the hair, he immediately recognized the maid, his friend and benefactor from the past. Immediately, he took her back to the capital and made her his queen. 5. Archaeology. The Day ethnic group in Lao Cai has a story called Chu Hung Yu that talks about their ethnic origin, but the content is very close to the story of King Heo. Roughly speaking, Chu Hung Yu is the biological son of a girl who was taken by a magic pig to be his wife. He has better health than other people. When he grew up, he went to herd buffalo for a rich old man. That area has a lake, at the bottom of which there is a magical buffalo that often comes to the surface to eat grass. The saliva of the magical buffalo gets into the grass, and the village buffaloes compete to graze it all. One time the magic buffalo ate rice. Yu chased it and picked up a feather. He took it and waded into the lake. The water suddenly parted and let it go. Yu went down to the magic buffalo and picked up a lot of foam, brought it back and spread it on the grass for the village buffaloes. So the buffalo does not damage the people's crops. The buffalo herding children made a rule that whoever climbed to the top of the towering mountain would be honored as king. No one could climb it except Yu, who only climbed a few steps to reach the top. From now on, Yu was respected by the people as a real king. One day, Yu scooped water to wash the village owner's feet and scratched 3 moles on the soles of his feet. The village owner said, "Those 3 pearls command 10,000 soldiers." Yu replied, "What's so precious about that? I have 6 notes on my left foot and 9 notes on my right foot." Seeing this, the village owner immediately put him in prison and forced him to carry water with 2 bottomless buckets, but he still found a way to carry it full of water. The village owner's daughter loved him, gave him food and kept begging him to eat. After that, she helped Yu escape from prison. The village owner sent his troops to chase him. Yu scratched the moles on the soles of his feet. Immediately, the plants turned into soldiers, defeating the village leader. Then the village owner sent reinforcements to surround the village. Yu poured out the black bean tube. The black bean turned into a soldier, protecting the village ruler so that Yu could escape. Coming to a river that blocked him, thanks to the magical buffalo hair, he was able to get to the other side. Yu applied to work as a servant at a temple. One day while cleaning, Yu ordered the Buddha statues to run throughout the house. The monk at the temple believes that Yu will become king. A few years later, that region held a festival to choose a talented person to become king. The condition is to be able to climb a very high pillar placed on the roof of the palace and get an object as a sign of descent to present to everyone. No one could climb it, only Yu climbed up like a squirrel and got it right away. After becoming king, Yu led his people to attack everywhere. Wherever you go, they will punish you so that you will know the signs to return home. One time, Yu brought people to an area like what is now Lao Cai. When they tried to find their way back, they could no longer find it, because the banished banana trees grew back as good as before. So Chu Hung Yu's army had to staying here to make a living and make a living. That is, they are the ancestors of today's day people. 6. 1. According to Cai Vang's third wife. 2. According to Kentho people. 3. according to Sun Tay people. 4. Hu, pig, spoken from Quang Binh. 5. According to Lands and Genebral books, cited. Regarding the part about catching the statue and raising its hand, see also the story Debt Like a God, number 44, the story Trang Hien, number 81, and the story Van Lich Coin, number 41, all in volume 2. 6. According to Viet Bac Ancient Tales cited. Thank you for joining us for today's fairy tale. We hope these stories bring joy and meaning to your day. If you love our channel, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any exciting tales. Wishing you a good night and sweet dreams. See you in the next story.